welcome to a special episode of the Black Country History Hunter. Today, I'm in a very solemn place for myself because I've known about this story for a long time and I've always wanted to cover it, not just because it's sad and very poignant, but because the man who perpetrated this dreadful thing is still out there, guys. He's never been caught. It's one of the biggest miscarriages of justice which happened to the Bridgewater Four, and also the biggest injustice that the gentleman that did portray it is still out there at liberty. Now, Carl lived here, and 4 doors away lived a man called Hubert Spencer. Now, we're going to hear more about him later, but he was a pleasant young man by all accounts, you know. Didn't deserve this at all. So, yeah, let's go down to the shop where he would have been going that down his little push bike, you know. No idea of the tragedy that was about to befall him, his family and his friends. Right, let's go. Right, folks, we're just walking down now the road he would have rid down that day. The gentleman mowing his lawn over there was the gentleman I spoke to earlier. And this is the back area. So this area, he would have played here. The gardens are just there. So number 21 would have been there. And, no, sorry, number 25 there, number 21 further down. Now, Spencer, we're going to speak about later, his ex-wife said that on the day of the murder, Spencer was seen on the back garden with a jumper that was drying on the line. Now, this is a man that didn't wash anything. His wife did it. So it was a very strange thing for his wife to see. And she didn't think till years later. I think she was bullied and harassed and scared, to be honest, because he was quite a mean man. By all accounts, he was quite a mean man. People feared him in the area. If he warned you, you knew about it. And it was the same in prison, apparently. But yeah, let's carry on the walk. So we're coming away from the house now. He would have been coming down that day, just walking down the road like a normal kid. Well, not walking, riding down the road, excited about doing his paper round, you know. He's a young man looking to start work, looking to start doing something to make some money for whatever he wanted to do. He had siblings. He had his mom, Janet, and his dad, Brian. You know, I had a dad called Brian as well. No family ever expect to say goodbye to their son that young, do they? So they didn't expect that day. So you would have been coming down here, guys. Yeah, so the shop we're heading to now, you can see here, that's the shop itself. Now, that shop has got a really tragic story itself, actually. So the shop used to belong to a guy called Sporty Matthews. Now, I think, and I believe, that this man, Sporty Matthews, was an off-course betting man, and he got his name Sporty because his love of sport, his love of gambling. And at the end of his life, he was very old, I think he was in his 70s, I believe. He must have accumulated some debts, some trouble. So he owned a shop on the main road, which we're going to now. And as you can see in this article here, he actually committed suicide, sadly. But the thing that's wrong about it for me is he didn't just kill himself, he risked killing other people because he actually set a fire to the building that he was in when he hung himself. Whether that was for insurance purposes, for his family, I don't know. And the shop was burnt down. A few years later, his daughter rebuilt the shop. And then sadly, she's the lady that was running the shop when Carl was killed at the yew tree farm incident. So yeah, not the best thing. And then later on, another incident, a woman I know named Janet Flukes, sadly was working at the flower shop, slipped over and broke her neck and died. So there's 3 tragedies in one shop. Right, folks, so we're just walking up the main road now, and to my left, you can see that grey area. That's the shop. So I ain't going to get too close, so I don't want to upset the people in there. But this is a shop that was burnt down. And then this extension was built. You can see where the original woodwork would have been. It was never a big shop. It was always a side-on thing. But I'll show you the original shop now from... Right, guys, you'll have to excuse the noise of the road. I'm on a main busy road, but there's the shop. So on that tragic day, he came here to collect his few newspapers for his round in the area. Now, one of the most distant newspapers and one of the last drops was at Yew Tree House. Now, he had a very kind-hearted Carl. And one of the things he would do with the 2 people living there, he would give their newspaper by taking it in because they were quite old. One was 79, I believe, and they were quite old. So basically, he would take their papers in and leave them on the side. So this is why this apparently occurred, because he walked in, they think, on a burglary. But we will see. We're going to go down to Yew Tree Farm now and walking down the Lawnswood Road. This would have been the road that the poor guy, the poor kid, rode down that day doing his deliveries. What other papers he delivers, I don't know. But sadly, he arrived there. So he left the place at 4 o'clock. He went to get his papers, and then he continued down here on his push bike. Now, he'd have gone to several stops on the way, and they reckon he reached Lawnswood, reached the farm, Yew Tree Farm, around 4:20. And at that point, unfortunately, he was shot. So he was found in the front room, I believe, sitting on the settee. It had been placed on the settee. I don't know. But looking at the evidence, it seems to me that a lot of it lands on this Spencer geezer. He lived right by Carl. He also had a best friend called Hubert Wilkes, who was the Holloway House Farm, which is just over the road from Yew Tree Farm. Now, these two were thick as thieves. They used to shoot the land, the Yew Tree land, together, and they both collected, sold, and dealt in antiques on the side. Now, Spencer was later to brag in jail that the ambulance driver job he had was just a cover, and that really it was this, like, dodgy top-end art dealer. And to this day, when he's been interviewed, he's still got antiques in his house. So he still covets antiques. I think in a way, he lived in a bit of a fantasy land. So yeah, him and Hubert, well, they were both Huberts, which is weird, both Burts. Burt Spencer and Burt Wilkes. Now, Burt Wilkes was 70. He lived in the farm opposite, like I said, and he would have had a bit of money himself because he was a farmer. But when it comes to antiques like that, sometimes they're unbuyable. You can't buy an antique that's in a house if the person don't want to sell it. But if you covet that antique, and it means everything to you. These men, I believe, would have stopped at nothing to get what they wanted. And they saw the people that lived at Yew Tree as a bit gullible, maybe, because they were shooting on that land, they were farming that land. The people that lived at Yew Tree were actually an elderly couple, and this couple were classed as disabled. So poor little Carl would take the paper into him. Don't forget, he's only been doing this 2 months. So he's fresh to the job, he's new to the job, he was liked. They called him the Atom because he'd be shooting everywhere, and he was a scout leader. So really, really, if he had have lived, who knows what he could have achieved, So this man, this horrible man, whoever he is, whether it's Spencer or not, is at liberty today. Whoever killed Carl is at liberty today. Whoever it is cut a really valuable life short, and he don't deserve to be on this earth, and he don't deserve to be kicking around free. So as soon as these guys, what happened was, after the car was found, obviously there was a massive manhunt on. This was a huge, huge crime. Shocked Wordsley, shocked the Black Country. Now, they ended up arresting a guy because basically a few months later, after Carl's death, there was no leads. They had interviewed a lot of people who had shotgun licenses in the area, because obviously whoever did it had a shotgun, and also men who owned a Blue Viva Vauxhall, because Blue Viva was seen at the site. So this is the chronology as far as I'm concerned. This is the evidence. Somebody had seen a Blue Viva. Somebody had also seen a Land Rover, which actually fits the description of one of Wilkes's. The farmer lives opposite. So anyway, they had another robbery a few miles away, and they traced this car to a gentleman called Vincent Hickey. They traced the car to a guy called Vincent Hickey. Now, they arrested him, and obviously the police at the time, they were looking for names of people that could have killed Carl. So they would have pressured him. There was a bad tactics back then in the day. They would have pressured him for names. So whatever they did, the tactics they used on one of them was really bad, and he explained that, Pat Malloy. So Pat Malloy's name was given in, Michael Hickey's name was given in, and also James Robinson's name was given in. Now, these four were arrested, and this is the Bridgewater Four. So after Vincent Hickey was caught with this car that was at this robbery, Robinson, Hickey, and Malloy, the two Hickeys, Robinson and Malloy, was arrested. Now, Pat Malloy was taken to Womburn Police Station, and he was actually interrogated by a DCI man called Perkins. Now, whether it's true or not more, he stated that while he was in, I think on the 8th of December, 1978, he was taken into custody at Womburn. And over those 3 days, he was woke up at every 30-minute intervals. He was given highly salted food. He was beaten, but they'd always make sure they wouldn't leave marks on the face. He was, told if he was to come forward and admit that he was there, or at least admit the other three were there, he'd get beers and drinks and stuff. So he was given lots of incentive to make up a statement. He was also told he wouldn't get such a big sentence. He was going down anyway, you're more going to get done anyway. You might as well get a few years off your stretch. And once they committed to this, I think the police thought that's it, they'd committed. So Vincent never come into, Spencer then was a secondary thought, even though he may have been the original murderer. This idea that once they've bought into this lie, that's it, they've got a man, they've got a scapegoat, that's all that matters. So yeah, he'd have been going towards U-Tree to give his paper in. He would have probably, in the past, have had exchanges of hello and goodbye. Maybe he knew they weren't going to be there that day. Did they actually tell him on the days before paper they weren't going to be there that day? Who knows? Now, this is what I want to know is, did Mr. Spencer, did Burt Spencer know that paper boy was coming that day? Was this some sort of premeditated killing? We already know he's a violent man. People have said that he was a violent man. He was a hunter. He shot for pleasure. He was a blood sportman. He killed, not long after Carl was killed, in the same manner. He shot another person point blank in the face. He said it was later because he'd threatened to spike his wife's cocktail or something. This is the wife that he went on to become divorced from. I think there was a lot of fear when people were around him. And the interviews I've seen with him, it seems even now he's still threatening, but maybe his threats aren't as what they were because he's an old man now, but you never can be too careful. But if he's a murderer, it don't matter how much he threats, does it? Because he's murdered a child, he's a child killer, and consequently he should be gibbeted, this road here, already done it. But, so these two elderly couple, we might have been expecting Carl that day, but either way, Carl went there and was consequently murdered. Cold-blooded, murdered, which shocked the whole of the black country. 4 men went away and they weren't guilty. They got discharged after 20 years, I think it was, something like that, of being wrongly arrested and wrongly put in prison. One of them died in prison in 1981, Pat Mahoy, the guy who originally gave the statement, but then later on, when he got a lawyer, said actually that was false statements, and he was given salty food, so he had to drink out the toilet. He was woke every 30 minutes. He was basically told by this DCI Perkins, your life's going to be hell until you give us a statement that follows this. They even dictated the statement to him. It weren't even in his own words. Now, why I think it's Spencer? Obvious reasons. He lived in the same street as Carl, number one. 2, a blue Vauxhall Viva was seen leaving the farm and also at the farm around 4 o'clock, 4:20. He owns a Vauxhall Blue Viva. During one of his interviews, he said, if I was turning left from U-Tree Farm, nobody would see me. Nobody mentioned turning left. Why wouldn't he have been turning right? Turning right would be the quickest way back to Corbett Hospital. But turning left, he would not hit as many people. It would be a longer route, but a less busy route. So I think he took that route, and also it's a route where he could have hid his loot. Now, his wife says, years later, that actually there was some antiques not long after Carl's death that was being hidden in a house nearby. And somebody saw Spencer hiding them in the shed, and they confronted him. And he threatened them, told them not to tell anybody, then told his wife he's going to have to bury him in the area around U-Tree or Prestwood. I think they did some magnet fishing in the pools, because between here and Corbett, going the route I think he went, which is this route here, there's only so many places he could have put that gun. Only so many places he could have hid that loot. But let's not forget, he knew this area very well because he shooted it. And people that shoot generally walk a lot, and they walk the area. He know all the nooks and crannies, where he hid his antiques, Now, the antiques that were stolen that day were worth 100 quid. I mean, a life of a 13-year-old boy with all that amazing potential, 100 quid. I know, it just doesn't compare, does it? Apparently, some of the stuff that was missing, I'll put some examples up now. These aren't actually the things, but I'll put some examples up. So there was a rare bed warming pan. Now, the reason it was rare is because instead of taking coal, a bed warming pan is a stick with a pan on the end, and you basically put it into the bed sheets to take out the damp. But this particular example was made using hot water rather than coal, so it was a rare one. Anyway, so yeah, there was 2 teapots and a porcelain bowl like this. Now, obviously, they wouldn't show up with a metal detector, but a bed warming pan would have been copper, so that will show up on the metal detector. And the ex-wife of Spencer, years later, said that she saw some antiques that came to the house and then got hidden in a friend's garden. Well, not a friend, just a stranger's garden. Then when the stranger was confronted, Spencer apparently had to hide him. Like I said earlier, Spencer also was seen, these are all the points that make me think it's him. Spencer was seen with a jumper. Now, the jumper was being washed. Now, that's something he'd never do. And then the lady, his ex-wife, said she never saw that jumper again. Now, this could have been a jumper he wore underneath the uniform. Or if it was a premeditated killing, maybe he took his uniform off, committed the murder, put his uniform back on, and maybe it was all planned. Maybe this was what he wanted to do. You know, the fact that he point blank shot somebody in the face twice, for my betting, he's a murderer, he's a serial killer. And he got some sort of thrill out of it, like he does killing animals. He's got those Deadpool eyes, you know. He just, look at his face. He just looks like a killer. I know I'm up for slander for that, but he's a murderer. He's been convicted as a murderer, and he served his time as a murderer for shooting the man like half a mile away from where Carl was shot. You know, what a weird coincidence. And in the same manner, point blank in the face. You know, he was an antique dealer. They were there for antiques. He would have known the house. He shot on the land. He would have known the land. He knew Wilkes very well. They were in it together. Somebody said that they saw a Land Rover near the house about 20 minutes after or 20 minutes before Carl was meant to be there. So, I don't know, were they in it together? Were they searching for antiques together? Was this a planned... Because they knew that the couple living there was going to be out that day. But did they also know Carl was coming? Did Carl surprise them? So yeah, we're not far away from the house now, guys. It's getting a bit more twilight. It would have been about 4:20 when Carl arrived. Apparently there was a bike as well. There was a bike, and this didn't get mentioned in court, which is very bad. They tried to get to the bottom of it by reenacting this. But yeah, sadly, they never got anywhere with it. The bike that was found... Now, it's weird that in one of the statements I've heard that Spencer said that he used to fix Carl's bike. Now, why would he say that? I think that would be a way of getting around the evidence if ever there were fingerprints found on the bike, because somebody picked up the bike and threw it in the pigsty. Now, there was no print on the bike at all, apart from some on the bar where you would think to grab it and throw it over. But they weren't Spencer's prints. But they weren't the Bridgewater 4s either. So that would have got the Bridgewater 4 off, but that evidence never came up in court. It was like it was weighted against them, you know? It was almost like the court had already made the decide they needed a scapegoat. It was a horrific crime. You know, the end justifies the means sort of thing. As long as you get the crook, it doesn't... As long as you get a crook, somebody to blame, Lawrence would drive there. Somebody to blame, it doesn't matter. So these 4 boys were martyrs, really. Martyrs. And it didn't do anybody any good. So Spencer didn't go free. Maybe he felt guilty about Carl's death and wanted to go to jail. He wanted to pay his pittance, but didn't want to be known as a child killer. So maybe shooting Wilkes in the head is the same crime. And to go to prison, he did 15 years. Now, apparently, if he'd admitted it and said that it was a crime of passion and his wife was threatened, he'd have only done 5. But he didn't give any explanation at all. He just shot the guy in the head and got sent away. Nobody, I don't know, did they never connect the 2 cases? But at this time, don't forget, they'd already done a conviction for the Bridgewater 4. Now, it's pretty embarrassing for the government and the law system to backtrack on such a conviction. In the end, they had to. They had no choice. The evidence against them was bad, at least. You know, it was mostly circumstantial, and a lot of it was down to this forced confession that went on to be known as forced. So it wasn't watertight conviction. They'd got somebody, and then because they thought they'd got the right people, they stopped looking. Now, I think Spencer was pulled in a few times and questioned about why he didn't mention the guns on his first interview. And he said it's because, why he didn't mention that he did a bit of shooting over at the farm and worked on the farm. He said because he didn't want to get done for working 2 jobs, which is it's nonsense. You know, in such a serious case as that, you tell everything that you had to, everything you knew. everything you knew, you'd say, you know, this is a lad that's lost his life. You wouldn't hold back any information. You'd be scared to, just in case that lie turned out to get you into the trouble. You know, you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in those cases, I believe. And the truth will free you. And the police didn't work like that back then. That Malloy was given salty food. They spat in his drinks. You know, the opponent did the most awful things. They woke him up every 30 minutes until eventually he was so sleep deprivated. I think they chose him as the victim to pick on because he was the older of the three. He was an Irishman, you know, and they were derogatory at the time. They looked down on the Irish, the police did. I think there's interviews where he said that to call him some horrible names. And he was picked on for that. You know, they chose him as the the one who might break first. And maybe if he'd never have broke, they'd have put pressure on the other three. And they'd have got one of them to break and to admit to this crime. But yeah, so all this time this is going on, Spencer's free as such, but obviously guilty. So then he finds the most minuscule reason to shoot his best friend Wilkes, 70-year-old man, who'd been his friend for a long time. Some say that Wilkes might have seen something. If his Land Rover was at the farm that day, maybe they were in it together. Maybe Wilkes was there being shown around by Spencer. You know, Spencer showing off that he had access to the house. You know, he knew that the paper boy could get in as well. It'd been left open for the paper boy, whatever. You know, they knew that they could get access. Maybe they were in there having a good look round, and Spencer was saying, oh, what do you like? Anything you like? You know, I'll get it for you. Sort of thing. Maybe he would con it out of him rather than steal it. But anyway, Wilkes probably left Spencer alone, and then Wilkes hears that there's this murder at the house, and he confronts Spencer and says, mate, you know, you were there, I was there. I'm going to the police. I've got to go to the police. You know, this is a young kid that's died. And then Spencer's like, no, you're not. You know, bang, you're dead. You'll never tell a soul what you saw that day, mate. Sort of thing. That's in some big houses now. Not far away. It's further than I thought, folks. I ain't going to lie. It's further than I thought. Waffling on. Like I said, in that one interview, Spencer states, if I was there's a Land Rover, similar to the one that would have been here that day, which belonged to Wilkes, which was seen by a man on a tractor. So, yeah, if Spencer had been turning left, Spencer said, you wouldn't have seen me wearing a uniform. Now, nobody mentions anybody turning left. He just mentions this. So here's the house. Private access. So this is where it all happened, guys, the sad event. So on that day, Spencer maybe, definitely not the Bridgewater 4. It's a horrible name to call him, the Bridgewater 4. Definitely not the 4 people that are accused. Because that's not a very nice thing to have a name put to, is it, when the boy that died was a 13-year-old boy. But here it is, guys. So this is Holland House now, Holland House. And there it is. Absolutely. It's a beautiful Jacobean-style property. It's a bit like Himley Hall with its front, that Catholic thing there for some sort of, you know, some sort of statue to go in. But yeah, there you go. There it is. Yeah, so there it is, folks. Really, really sad place to be. I know we can't solve it, but I wish they'd reopen the case, because there's somebody still out there. And with the technology today, we can reevaluate it. Let's have another look at those fingerprints. Is there no DNA evidence? Is there nothing they can do to try and connect it to Spencer? If it wasn't Spencer, get Spencer out of the picture. But I don't know how they can make the evidence fit to one person, to those 4 men, and not make it fit to Spencer. I'll never know. It's like, but I think they didn't realise how much Spencer had in common with the case until after. And they'd already made one big boo-boo. So I don't think they could risk, you know, putting another person in that position of being accused of something that they may not have done. But yeah, we're going to walk down now the road where I believe Spencer turned here. I believe Spencer turned here after committing that horrible murder, left onto this main road and down. And somewhere along this line in the Presswood area, he buried the loot a few days after. He destroyed a jumper, and he also planted a letter that kind of pointed it away from him, not far away. Now, the other house, Holloway House, is up that way. So, guys, I was going to walk down to Holloway Farm. You can just see the roof there in the distance. I don't know if you can see it, actually. Well, just there in the distance, there's a roof of Holloway Farm. I'll put a picture up now of it because I can't seem to spot it that way. But, yeah, you can see it here on the map. the road is really busy. So if I did try and walk, I'd probably get killed. I've nearly got killed coming this far, to be honest. As you can see, there's no paths. There's no paths, and it's a bloody fast road. So I don't fancy walking any further, and I'm losing the light. So yeah, Holloway Farm, as you can see on the picture here, Mr. Wilkes lived here. Now, Mr. Wilkes had been farming the yew tree farmland for quite a while because the house came with a bit of land, so they would have had to have a connection with the people living at the house. Now, maybe Spencer was a predator in the sense that young and old, he saw as vulnerable. Now, this 79-year-old woman that lived at yew tree, he would have seen her as a pushover, you know? This is a man that kills for sport. And if you haven't seen the interviews yet, anywhere here he could have hid the stuff, guys. You know, would have took him 2 seconds to pull over on a not too busy road back in '78, run into the trees here and dump his loot. Now, I was going to do a bit of metal detecting, but I'm losing the light now, so I'm going to come back another day, I think, and do that. Anywhere here, look. He just jumped, maybe he's on his way to Wilkes's. Maybe Wilkes was the one that got rid of the loot. Who knows? And Wilkes was having second thoughts when he was shot. But they both knew this land like the back of their hand. They would have known all the inroads. They would have known all the dumping places. You know, anything like that. They would have known. So yeah, is Wilkes just one victim of a serial killer? You know? Apparently Spencer boasted in prison at the fact that he killed the boy that recognised him. You know, so there's so much. These conkers or chestnuts? Oh, the chestnuts. Shake it, see if they're ready. One fell off, they're not ready. See what I mean about deadly? They're coming round here like 300 miles an hour. How on earth anybody survive here, I don't know. I've got to get across the Kevin Road. Come on, mate. Put it up. It's just constant as well. You know, one of them roads where it's just bloody constant. Oh, no. Nearly got killed. Lovely. Don't slow down, mate. I want to get across. See what I mean? Start slowing down. That shocked them, look. They expect that. Just come out the bushes. Now, obviously, back then, it wouldn't have been as busy. So, you know, I don't know. Would he have pulled over here and gone in there? Probably not. It's a fast road. Coming around that corner, there'd have been speeding as well, no doubt. This is quite a steep bank here, so I've got to be careful. I don't slip into the road. So many cars coming, so I can't even walk on the road. It does straighten up down here a bit, though. I'll have a bit in the road and a bit out the road. Right, guys, so I'm out the danger now, back on the road or on the path, the kind of grassy path, heading back now towards Yew Tree Farmway. So yeah, what was the exercise of today really? It's just to draw to some attention to the fact that Carl's killers are still out there, they're still loose. Is it Spencer? I don't know. I'd put my money on Spencer. I'd like to see a lot more work being done on the Spencer case. He might pass away before he gets put to justice. Will he confess on his deathbed? Some do, don't they? Some don't. But the fact that he's capable of such murders proves that he's capable, because he actually done it on poor Mr. Wilkes, didn't he? He shot Mr. Wilkes in the head in a very similar manner. Right, guys, I'm just outside Yew Tree Farm again now. I'm going to take this second now just to hold Carl in my thoughts for a minute, you know, because he didn't live long. Who knows what he could have achieved, and the bastard that killed him is still out there somewhere, living a life, no doubt. But he don't sleep too well at night. And them poor boys that went away, you know, they went away for something they never did, because at the time the police were corrupt. I'm not saying the police are corrupt today. I think police do a great job, and they did then. But in this case, there was a few bad apples. Do you know what I mean? I know sometimes the ends justifies the means, and I can understand putting a dangerous criminal behind bars if you know he'd done it. But fabricating evidence and making the facts fit the crime, or making the crime fit the facts, you know, for me, that's just wrong, man. You're putting the wrong people away. So let's just, for a minute, think about Carl and what Carl could have achieved in his life if he'd have got the opportunity to live. These might be the people that live there now, actually. Just pulling in. So, yeah, That one's for you, Carl. Wherever you are now, mate. I hope you're resting in peace. I had one of your relatives contact me the other day. And, you know, again, I gave him my condolences. One of your cousins, who no doubt misses you very much, mate. So, yeah, this is where it all happened. And the case is a very messy one. So we're going to start walking back now. The antiques that went missing, which I think are somewhere over the Presswood Woods, still waiting to be discovered. You know, they need to get archaeology, they need to get a group of metal detectorists. That's what they need to do. They need to get the relevant permission, say a rally of 100 people in them woods. And if it is what they say it is that went missing, that rare brass bed warmer, they'll find it. And if they find it, there could be prints on it. I don't know how prints work. I'm sure I was looking at it the other day. I wanted to find the prints off the bike and do some sort of quasi investigation of my own. Because imagine, I know there are groups now on Facebook that are solving crimes because the police haven't got all the resources. There are cold case detectives. The cold case detectives should be on this. You know, they should be on this. If Burt Spencer is guilty, I know he's an old man now, and I know he's already served 15 years, but it's nowhere near what he should have served, you know, for ending that young man's life. If he did, no way did that pay for his penance. You know, in one of the shows, Spencer says, you know, people can't forget, you know, you pay your pittance and they call forget. No, we call forget. For me, I'm an eye for an eye kind of guy. You kill somebody, mate, you should lose your life. I know that's controversial. As simple as that. If you intentionally murder, then you've lost the entitlement to live. You know, you've took somebody, there's no paying for that. You know, you can't just do a few years in prison and think that's it. This guy's lost a life. You know, this kid was 13, he had his whole life ahead of him. If it's the case that he was killed by Spencer, then yeah, he should do the time. He should be killed for it, should be hung for it and gibbeted. But yeah, we need to find the evidence first. So I think the main place to look would be in the woods for the antiques and for these prints. It's an old print of Hubert Wilkes. You know, was he there? Was he involved? Why did Spencer kill Wilkes? Now, at the court, he never admits this, but apparently, afterwards, he said it's because at a party, Hubert Wilkes had made advances at his wife, offering her special cocktails that apparently he used to drug him and rape him, wife swap. This is what it makes out anyway. And the reason he didn't use this as a defence in the original case is because he was protecting a suicidal friend who didn't want to get known as a wife swapper. A woman, apparently. But yeah, a lot of people have looked at it and they've all said, you wouldn't do that, it's not normal. You know, if you can get a 5-year sentence, then you get a 5-year sentence. At the time, he had no answer. I think he was trying to repent for what he'd done. You know, he was guilty, whether it was an accident or not, I don't know. Was it a threat that went wrong? Or was it pure and simple, a psychotic man shooting a young boy in the face? Which I think it might be, guys. I think it might just be a psychotic man shooting a kid in the face and then hoping he can get away with it. Don't forget, every day he's out shooting. He works in a hospital. You'd be surprised what people are capable of. I often think to myself, we couldn't imagine murder because we're not murderers, you know, and it's just strange how he killed him in the same manner. You know, what a coincidence. The blue car, which he owned, Aviva, which he owned, was seen at the site. What a coincidence. This evidence for me is much more than a forced confession. The fact that he lied about the police, the guns, the fact that this letter turns up, the fact his own wife thinks he done it. You know, there's so much. Mrs. Rybold and Mrs. Johnson worked at the hospital, Corbett's Hospital. Here's a picture of Corbett's Hospital. And this is where Burt worked as an ambulance coordinator. Now, an ambulance coordinator was a man who had quite a lot of power over his own life. He could do what he wanted when he wanted. He was out there coordinating ambulances. I imagine he could have worked from a van, could have worked from a car. But on this particular day, I believe he drove back to Hewtree to have a look. His alibi was he was at work all day. Now, he said that the woman that gave him the alibi, Mrs. Rybold, was there all day, but she wasn't. She went home at dinner time. It was a job share, and Mrs. Johnson took over. Now, Mrs. Johnson refused to speak on camera and refused to speak to anybody. But Mrs. Rybold was visited by Burt a few years ago with a psychologist. She was passing where I passed earlier, where I'm going to pass again now. She looks scared. Not this again, Burt. No, it's better this time, you know. You ain't got to lie so much. I've wrote a book. I'm making money off this poor lad. You know, why she lied? I think she was scared of him. Some say that he had a girlfriend there. Right, matey. Some say they had a girlfriend there, that he had women on the go, you know, several women on the go at the hospital. So who knows? But he was a man who threatened. And the fact that he was hard in jail, you know, these hardened criminals at these jails he went to were fearing him. Not because he killed the man, shot point blank in the head, but because he was quite one of them sort of men. In one of his interviews, he mentions how he's a tough man because his dad was a tough man. Was he abused as a child? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know what happened in that house. Nobody ever will. I know one thing: a young lad who had a great, bright future ahead of him lost his life that day. And if we can get this case back in the courts and get Spencer back in the dock, you know, there's a woman out there that's trying to get Spencer. And somebody asked her once, why hasn't Spencer sued you? And the answer was this: well, he knows he's done it, and he knows if he sues me, it's in court. And as soon as it's court, evidence will come forward and he'll get done. So he can't, so he's just keeping his mouth shut. But is he making money off the book he wrote? Yeah. Is it because he's been accused of killing a child? Yes. Is he the child killer? I don't know. Anyway, folks, I think that's it, man. We've been to the shop, we've been to where he lived, we've been down to the farm. Very sad story, isn't it? You know, I just had to get it out of the way because it's one of those stories that's hard to tell. But I'm going to leave you now with a little montage of Carl. And I hope he rests in peace, you know. I wish he was still with us, but he's not. So rest in peace, Carl. Let us know in the comments what you think, guys. Was Burt Spencer the murderer? Was the weapon disposed of in the local canals? Should the local canals and rivers be dragged? Should they be magnet fishes? Should they have the clubs on there to try and find these antiques? Is the antique still there? So many unanswered questions, and we could find these out. We could answer these questions. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you think. Rest in peace, Carl. And I hope one day, before it's too late, we can catch your murderer, your killer, your vicious killer, and end this mystery. You know, this is a national mystery. Thanks for watching, folks, and see you on the next one, guys.